I'm thrilled to welcome this evening to PDY's four amazing women who happen to be partnered with persons living with Parkinson's disease. They are Katharine Parker, Heidi Bucklew, Cherryl Choi, and Tracey Cole. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Glad you're here. Look forward to our conversation. So our focus tonight is on the care partner, and particularly on what it's like to have Parkinson's as part of your family. When I was diagnosed, my neurologist said to me the moment or so after he told me I had PD, he said, "Alan, you now have a new family member, and everywhere you go, that family member will be with you, and you'll have to learn how to adjust to that." And for me, that's been an apt metaphor that Tracey and I reach back to fairly often, because it really does feel like a new family member. So I say that to maybe segue into the first question I want to ask each of you. And that is, how did your family's Parkinson's journey begin? When was your husband diagnosed? How old was he? How did it come about? Anything you would want to say about the beginning of your journey? Somebody has to go first. Yeah.
I'm happy to take that first. Brett was 38 and we were just doing our thing at our jobs with young kids. He thought he had carpal tunnel syndrome. He had a little bit of a tremor in his thumb and his hand when he was holding a carton of milk. He went to the doctor and the doctor spent 2 minutes with him and said, "You have Parkinson's disease." We didn't really know what that meant. Brett came home and told me. I was floored. I mean, it just wasn't something that we were even thinking about. You know, in your 30s, you don't think that that's something that would happen. You don't hear about young people getting Parkinson's disease. So that's how it came into our lives, pretty much as a shock. And we didn't have any lengthy pursuit of a diagnosis, anything of that sort. Brett got got diagnosed almost immediately upon having a very minor symptom, really.
Mhm.
In retrospect, we realized he had some other symptoms as well, but they just weren't bothering him. And so he never saw the doctor for any of them. So that's how our journey started.
Yeah. Thank you. Heidi, how about Bill and your experience? Sorry, Cherryl.
Sure.
Hold on. Yeah. You're next.
So ours was 9 years ago. Bill was 43 at the time. And he, he's always an athlete, right? He'd been running and he had some stiffness in his legs that he'd gone to physical therapy. They originally said it was sciatica. He went back and forth on some different diagnoses, but nothing was really working. And he struggled with that for a few years, at least 2 years. And then he happened to be online on one of these running boards, and the individual had the exact same symptoms as him, with the tightening of the leg and the back pain and the balance. And it turned out she had Parkinson's. And I remember him coming to tell me that evening, and he's like, I think this could be it. And, he had a small tremor, nothing major and nothing noticeable, but yeah, so he kind of, I think, figured it out on his own first. I'm kind of one of these everything happens for a reason people. And I will say he happened to be at dinner like that next week with some old colleagues from work. And the one guy was leaving the field to go into Parkinson's research because he had a big family connection. And Bill was just floored that, right when he figured this out, and he happened to be at a dinner where someone was talking about it. So he kind of pulled him aside and, immediately he got him in to see a doctor, and it went from there. But yeah, it was sort of a weird, I think there was a couple of years of not knowing. He probably had it sooner, but yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Cherryl?
Yeah, so Jimmy was diagnosed at the age of 27, so it's about 18 years ago now. And really how he was diagnosed was he went in for to get life insurance. soon after we got married. And it was the nurse that came by to do his evaluation. And she noticed some things with him. I think he mentioned that she asked about tremors, but mainly it was his gait. I think it was, she noticed that when he was walking, he wasn't swinging his right hand. And that was, so those were the two things that she called out specifically. And she said, you know, on her day job, she was a nurse for a neurologist, and she didn't tell him it was Parkinson's, but she highly suggested that he go see the doctor and bring those symptoms up. And when he did, that's when he got diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's. But I think in our journey and how he talks about it, it was very much of disbelief, and he went through several doctors to get clarifications or just confirmations that it is Parkinson's. So I think maybe I want to say fourth or fifth one. It was that, yep, he had Parkinson's. So probably how he didn't tell me he got that diagnosis. So all of this confirmations, all these doctor visits, he really didn't tell me until about maybe 3 months later, I think. And it was because he was going to start taking medications. When he started doing that, that's when he shared it with me. So he kept it for himself for a long while.
Thanks. Tracey?
Well, you can help me here if I omit anything really important, but fortunately for Alan, he did not have to go through many months of testing, seeing different doctors. He had a very mild tremor in one of his fingers, and he went to see our primary care physician. And while she wasn't terribly convinced that there was something going on, she did have enough medical acumen or clinical acumen to advise Alan to see a movement disorder specialist if his symptoms didn't abate. And so it took a while for Alan to get in to see this practitioner who she was recommending. But it did, after that visit with our primary care physician, it was unsettling for Alan because he didn't leave the appointment feeling, reassured that there wasn't something significant going on. So Alan contacted a friend who's a physician in town, and he helped Alan get in to see another neurologist who wasn't a movement disorder specialist. And this neurologist spent considerable time with Alan and reassured him that he was fine. And of course, we were very relieved. But something told Alan to keep the original appointment. And so he waited. And in the back of his mind, he really believed that there was something wrong. And he finally met with the movement disorder specialist. I apologize. I keep on saying that. And I think within, 20 minutes, this physician had identified the way his gait, same thing. He wasn't swinging his left arm, and he detected rigidity. Which interestingly, Alan had said probably 5 years prior to this appointment that he would always say, I feel really tight. I wonder if that's from all the sports that I played in high school and college. And like most people with Parkinson's, they have these subtle symptoms, but when they are officially diagnosed, then they look back and realized that there was the writing on the wall. And Alan was 48, and he's had it for 4.5 years.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I just kind of quickly, it sounds like in all of our cases, it's sort of big surprise. None of us expects to get this diagnosis, maybe ever, but particularly in our 20s or 30s or 40s. And then it's sort of like, okay, this is our new family member, our new normal, whatever image you might use. I hear that from a lot of people, especially young onset folks. So that's really consistent with my own experience. What's it like to live with a partner who has Parkinson's? Cherryl, I'm going to ask you first since I cut you off rudely the first time, to go first. But what's it like to have this as part of your family? I mean, all of you have had it now for many years, and what's it like?
I couldn't tell you a typical day, really. You really don't know what you're gonna get. I'm a planner by nature. I like to plan things out, and you kind of have to just throw all that out the window, because whatever we had planned out, we might have to just nix it all because it's a bad day of symptoms, and we're just not going to do what we had planned out to do. But it's also, it's led us to some interesting avenues or interesting connections. It's one of the best things I would say about Parkinson's is even just connecting with the group of folks here. That's something I would never have planned out or thought of back then, but it is adapting daily. To me, that's what it is. It's you just have to adapt daily to what it's going to throw at you.
Yeah. Somebody else.
I'll speak. I think that we maybe plan a little more. We know that if we have a lot going on, fatigue for Alan later in the day. Alan is someone he still has a lot of energy, but he would always have a second and a third wind. And so, we may not, if we have a heavy schedule earlier in the day, we will, be very mindful of not overscheduling. I feel like it's been a good thing, actually, because Alan and I will take time for ourselves more. And we just, I don't know, I think we just ensure that we create space for Alan just to have some time to decompress. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to edit that. First edit.
I decompensate too, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, so I think we're just very mindful of creating the space for Alan just to get what he needs physically, primarily, and emotionally.
Katharine or Heidi?
Heidi, do you want to go?
Sure. I would agree completely with what Tracey and Cherryl just said. It's definitely about planning, not knowing what the day is going to bring. I also think it's hard. Bill's symptoms are not maybe as advanced as some people, so that's also hard too. I sometimes have days where I completely forget that he has the disease, right? And it's not first and foremost in my mind all day. And so I might be rushing him or doing something, not thinking that he needs the extra time, and just kind of trying to be mindful of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Heidi, it's interesting that you say that, because sometimes that's true for me as well with Brett, because he doesn't always show his symptoms. His medicine works very well, and I'll keep pushing to do things, and then he'll say, "Look, I'm really tired." It has impacted trips that we take. We're not going skiing, we're not going kayaking. There's certain sports, for example, we stopped doing or planning those kinds of activities as a family. But in the first couple of years after Brett was diagnosed, we didn't tell anyone. Brett didn't want to tell anybody. We didn't tell the kids. So it was a lot of denial in a way, and just keeping everything secret. So we didn't change anything. and he started to get more and more symptomatic, and at the point where he just couldn't continue anymore, he couldn't continue to hide, that's when he came out and told everybody. We told the kids. We didn't want anybody to worry because there's a lot of misperceptions or just not understanding what it is. And there's also no cure at the moment. So what are people going to do? It was just a question in our mind. What should we do? What should we say to people? I tried to follow Brett's lead and what he was most comfortable with, and then we talked together about how to tell the kids.
Yeah. A lot of common parts of the story here. It's really, really, I know all of your stories in some way or to some extent, but it's really powerful to hear you all talk about it. What surprised you so far about living with Parkinson's, for better or for worse? What's been more surprising?
I would just say similar to what Cherryl said before, getting hooked up with Team Facts and meeting all these people, not only that are older, but also so young. That was surprising to meet so many people that were so young that also were in the same situation. The stereotype, right, is the typical older disease. And so it was, I think our first event really was with the Chois and a bunch of families at the Rock the Ridge. We did this Team Facts event, and it was all young people running that event. And it was just really eye-opening and comforting for both of us to just meet all these people and their spouses and significant others and learn that we were not alone.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would echo that same thing. And those are really the most impactful moments when in any of those Team Fox events. It seems like it's knowing others, knowing other families that are going through it. It was a huge burden almost as soon as we met. Even that first lunch we had, Heidi, like it was just
Yeah.
a huge moment of relief. Like we're not alone in this. We can talk to other people about it, and knowing other people are going through it, you kind of model yourselves against, like how do you talk about Parkinson's on an everyday basis, because so that it's not so scary, and how do you talk to the kids about it? So that was, to me, was really really impactful, and it's a great teacher of life, is what I could say, is what's been really surprising about it. And just on resilience, what's really an impactful relationship that we should have in our lives, and adaptability, because that's really been like it's a daily thing that we have to navigate daily.
Yeah. Other thoughts about that?
I don't know if I don't know if I don't know if this falls in the same category, but I was surprised to learn how varied people's symptoms are, and how just learning more about the disease that I didn't know anything about. No one in our respective families has Parkinson's other than Brett. And I didn't realize how the symptoms just vary so widely, and how the course of the disease varies so widely. So there's a lot of uncertainty at the beginning. And then going forward, what I learned is that it's definitely not nearly as bad as I thought when I first heard the words from Brett that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. There are, notwithstanding that it's not curable, there are medicines, there are resources, there are people, and people are optimistic about the research. So what was terrifying to me when I first learned it, now is not so terrifying anymore. And I've learned what's been surprising is I've learned that this is just one challenge. in Brett's life, in our life, and there's lots of challenges. Everybody has a challenge, and this is just one of them. This is one of those things that life threw us. So it's been a great teaching thing for us.
Yeah, well said.
I agree about it being a teacher, this diagnosis, and I think it really has, in a very strange way, it has really enriched our couplehood and the community that we feel with people from Fox and, Power for Parkinson's, the folks here in Austin. And, it's so cliched, but really Parkinson's has taught us to just live each day to the fullest too. It's, I don't know. I just, I don't want to speak for Alan, but just appreciating everything, the trees, the flowers, children's voices. It's just made us very grateful and aware of what we have in spite of having the hardships of Parkinson's.
Yeah, I agree. And just maybe to echo in a way what all of you have said, I think for me, the community has been the most pleasant surprise that I never would have envisioned. And, Brad and Bill and Jimmy were among the first people I reached out to, even before I was public with Parkinson's, because I had identified them through my stealth research as people who were living well and, making a difference because they have Parkinson's, and they're the people I wanted to emulate. And then the community around them and others at Fox and other places has been just extraordinary. So I want to echo that theme as well. Returning to the support sort of piece for a moment, what kinds of support do you find yourself offering to your partner? What sorts of things assuming those are representative of many people with Parkinson's, what kinds of support do you find yourselves offering?
Support that Brett accepts. It's difficult to be a caregiver. I don't even really consider myself a caregiver at times because Brett does so well on his own. At the same time, he knows that he can talk to me about his symptoms, how he's feeling. He can be himself, and I see him in all the states of his Parkinson's, all whether he is on or off, and he can be himself with me without worrying what I'm going to think. So we're quite open about it. I think that's a relief to him, and I think that's one way you can be supportive. I've just said to Brett, you got to tell me when you're not feeling well. I can't know what his symptoms are because they're so changeable from day to day and hour to hour. So I guess that was one thing that we had to navigate a little bit, because we had to communicate, because I'm not in his body. I don't know. I can see, but that's not necessarily correlating to how he's feeling. And so he has to tell me if he's tired. If we're walking and he has to slow down, he has to tell me we have to slow down. If he's getting a cramp and he needs to stop, he needs to tell me that. So I think just being understanding and accepting of that unpredictability that Cherryl mentioned earlier as well.
Mm-hmm. I think I too don't feel as though I'm the typical caregiver, but I think just being an active listener Sometimes Alan can be pretty quiet, and just checking in with him, nudging him a little bit. I think listening is just having a presence has been helpful.
Other thoughts?
I can put it, and I've shared this before, so I use an acronym as to how I support Jimmy, because anyone who knows Jimmy knows that he doesn't need my help in what he tries to accomplish. But it's the acronym for PACER. And I think Katharine and Tracey, I agree with you. I'm not a caregiver, I'm a care partner. So that P is for partner, and that in many ways, how I feel I can support him, because I don't know what it's like to live with Parkinson's, but it's to understand like what's best for him in terms of the next treatment, the next exercise regimen, what makes sense for him. So that's partnering up, and a lot of that is talking it through. And then A is for being an advocate. That's one of the things that he and I have really been partnering up in terms of our fundraising efforts. He's definitely the face, and he's going through all of those challenges, but I will help organize things on the kind of the background, get things set up for him, and get those communications going, and get the fundraising going. But C would be cheerleader. So as much as I can, I'm at the end of that finish line cheering him on, or navigating through New York City with Heidi, trying to figure out the route to cheer on her husband. So that's quite an adventure. Empower, E is for empower, which is figuring out ways to empower him to reach for that new goal. The last couple of years, it's been Ninja Warrior, how do we get him ready for that? But then physically as well as mentally, during the pandemic, it was, he wanted world records, Guinness World Records. So trying to figure out those different ways to help him get through that goal. And lastly, R is, I just have it as repeat, because it's going to be a daily thing. He's just going to throw at me like, honey, I want to do this. So I'm like, okay, all right, we'll figure it out. So that's how I feel I can best support him, because I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how to treat those. But in terms of wellness and well-being from a day-to-day, I think those are where I can help him best.
It's great acronym.
I love acronyms.
Yeah. Heidi, you're going to say something?
No, I don't think I can add anything else to that. That's perfect. I agree with everything Cherryl just said. I mean, we're just partner number one, right? We're there for whatever they need. And then, behind the scenes, doing the grunt work and the dirty work, running around New York, whatever. And just being there for them, right? Yeah. To listen, and their partner.
And I usually go to Brett's doctor's appointments as well. During the pandemic, I didn't go with him, but normally I'm going with him and talking about the medicines and sort of what's next. So I'm also listening, and we can talk about that as a follow-up, and so that I know his caregiver.
Yeah.
His medical caregiver.
Yeah. Well, I educate social workers, so this next question comes from that perspective, as well as someone living with a care partner. But what do you do to take care of yourselves as care partners, with the assumption that those who offer support to others need to have support themselves? So what do you find helpful for supporting you? You gonna make me call on one of you to?
I'll go first, since I was last. I would just say having an amazing support team. I mean, not only people within Team Fox or spouses that you could count on, but just friends and neighbors in the neighborhood that, would love to just hang out with you for the night and let you vent or whatever. And just, having people that care for you and that are there for you no matter what.
Sorry about that.
It's not a Zoom meeting unless a dog barks, that's the new normal. Yeah, so community support and people you can sort of vent to, yeah, makes sense. Other thoughts about that? Katharine, how do you support yourself, or what kind of support do you allow people to give you?
Very little. That's just my personality. That's just my own personality, I think. And over time, I've had to learn, not just because of Brett's Parkinson's and as a caregiver, but just as a human being, as a working mom, that I need to take a little time for myself. And so one thing that I do is I exercise, and I do that pretty religiously. That I find is the most important thing to keep me centered. And unlike Brett and Jimmy and Bill, I don't do any of these great challenges. I just need a regular exercise every day. My motivation is because it's really my zen to keeps me balanced emotionally, to have that exercise every day, some form of outdoor exercise if possible.
Yeah. Thank you. Tracey, you want to go?
Well, I was going to say, I'm like Katharine. I just set aside some time most days to either get a run in or ride the bicycle, because I really feel it benefits my brain chemistry. It's a complete reset, and it really makes me a better person. Really, it does a lot of good.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, one thing I recently discovered is naps. It's so good to take a nap. So just being able to turn your brain off for just those few moments, that's been it's really nice indulgence for me in the middle of the day. So the pandemic kind of helps where we have that flexibility, but I love my naps.
Yeah, naps are underrated. People swear by them. So let's stay with the support and the family theme for a minute. All of you have kids. All of them were fairly young when Parkinson's came into your lives. How have they responded? How have they sort of made Parkinson's a part of their own experience?
I'll go. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead, Tracey.
I think because we have been very open with the girls about Alan's diagnosis. Alan was in this shroud of secrecy for the first maybe 10 months after his diagnosis. And that took quite a toll on him. And so I think once we shared with them, and we've just been very open. And in fact, I think they're pretty up to speed with how Alan is doing, and when he goes to the doctor, and we just didn't want it to be taboo. Really, it's just a very normal part of our lives, and I think that's it's really benefited them. Doesn't seem scary to them.
I would echo the same thing as Tracey. I mean, really how my kids knew about Parkinson's, they've never known Jimmy without Parkinson's. He's always had it. So they actually saw him in the bad parts of Parkinson's, where he was overweight, he was angry, he was walking with a cane. So they've seen the whole journey of it and how he talks about it very openly now. And that's what I want, is for them to, it's part of our everyday language. It's not, like you said, Tracey, it's not big taboo. It's not this big scary thing, because we're living through it. And even though there's things we don't know or understand, we'll figure it out along the way, or we somehow make things work. So if today is not the crazy adventure day, we'll find a different way to have fun. It's just being together. So that's how I want them to treat it. It's not something scary.
Yeah, I think that's important too. We were very concerned about the kids being scared and not knowing what this meant. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer not long after Brett was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And unlike Parkinson's, I had to go into surgery immediately. So we did not feel that we could keep that from the kids. So it set up a really strange dynamic, because we sat them down and told them, you know, I have cancer, I'm going to go to the hospital, I have good doctors, don't worry about anything, I'm going to be fine. And we tried to keep them informed on an age appropriate way, but at the same time, we hadn't told them that Brett had Parkinson's at that time. That was really hard on Brett. It was hard on me. When we did tell the kids that Brett had Parkinson's, I think we followed a similar path. You know, we told them in age appropriate terms. We already had been living with it for a while, so we knew that this is not something that they needed to worry about. And so we talked to them about it. And our younger son was much more interested in doing a little research into what the disease is. He looked up stuff on the internet. He was more interested. He was the first one who observed Brett's symptoms. He's a very, very observant, and not surprisingly, he's pre-med. So he's more involved, I would say, in he's more emotionally involved in some ways and wanting to talk with Brett more about it. Our younger son, our older son is very proud of all of his accomplishments, and will always, you know, share with his friends what Brett is doing in terms of fundraising. But at the same time, we didn't want the kids to be so focused on Parkinson's. We wanted them to live their own life. We wanted them to be in school. We wanted them to be doing their sports. We wanted to come to them. It's not their job to be, you know, worried about Brett or to be supporting Brett other than they would their dad as normal. And so we just tried to make it be, again, like a normal part of the family, with not really too much emphasis, not taboo, not overly emphasized. We just try to keep the focus on them and what they're doing, because we wanted them to have a normal experience and realize this is just one challenge. And I think they've learned a lot from Brett, that you can have a serious diagnosis and you don't have to let that define you. You don't have to let it limit you. And they've learned a lot through that and through Brett's example. So I'm really proud of how Brett has handled it, especially with our kids. I think it's had a good influence in teaching them how to overcome challenges.
Well, we've got a couple more questions here that I have on my mind. What gives you hope as you look ahead? Katharine noted at the beginning of our time together that so far, Parkinson's is not curable. It's highly treatable, and there's lots of hope in the pipeline, if you will, medication wise and otherwise. But what gives each of you hope as you live with Parkinson's, as your partner has Parkinson's, it's part of your family?
I guess I can start on that one. Like you said, the research is promising, so that's remains hopeful. But I think the other piece that I'm really hopeful about is how the dialogue is changing for Parkinson's. We still have a long ways to go. There's still a stigma, but I think it's not so scary out there anymore. There's much better awareness on it, especially for young onset. And I'm really proud to say a lot of that is happening because of our husbands, including you, Mr. Cole. It's really helping to change that in terms of what Parkinson's disease is, and that you can live well with Parkinson's.
Well said.
Thanks.
Yeah, very true.
What else gives you hope? Anything additional you'd want to say? Well, people like you give me hope. I'll say that. It's amazing to have partners in our lives who prop us up when we need it and kick us in the butt when we need it, and try to live a normal life, whether it's as a couple or as a family. I think that's really exemplary and wise. So that gives me a lot of hope that messages like the ones you all are sharing tonight are getting out to more and more people who will benefit from them, no doubt. Well, here's maybe a little different form of a similar question. If you could say one thing to a care partner whose spouse or partner has recently been diagnosed, what would that be? You all have the wisdom of a number of years of being on this journey and having conversations like this with one another and with other people in our community. Someone just getting on the road, what might you say to them?
I'd say this is not the end of the world. I'd say there are many, you can live a good life with Parkinson's, regardless of the symptoms. You can live a good life. It does not have to define you. And you'll be able to manage this disease. Because that's the unknown. I didn't know. I was really scared. I didn't know if I would be pushing Brett in a wheelchair by now. And fortunately, I'm not. But even if I were, I still think we would be out there doing things as best as we could. And I see that through the Team Fox and people that we meet with all of their different symptoms and how well people are doing with the variety of symptoms, good and bad. And so I would say you can do this, you can handle this.
I would totally agree. And just the other thing, just looking back, I know I didn't do this, but is allow yourself time to accept and also grieve and cry for what you thought was going to happen and it's not. But it's also, like you said, Katharine, it'll be okay. You'll figure it out. But it's giving yourself time to process of what this disease means. And then the next thing is educate yourself, because once I started really reading into it, understanding what those different symptoms are and what's a good day and what's a bad day, then I myself felt better because I knew how to help Jimmy in those circumstances. as well. So those would be my key things to share.
Those are good things.
Mhm.
I would just say, just to know you're not alone. You know, it can be so overwhelming and you feel kind of isolated and maybe you don't have any other friends or know anyone else going through it, but just reach out to the community, you know, get involved. Of course, I would have to mention exercise, right? All of our husbands are so into exercise and they really value the impact that has on, for most of them, slowing the progression, and just how important that can be for everyone too.
And I would say as a care partner too, and what went through my mind is, what happens if Brett can't work anymore? We have a family, you know, and that can be scary. That can be really scary. And so that's something that as a care partner, we haven't touched on. You haven't talked about, asked us really about that, but it comes up for me now with this kind of question and what to expect. Because there are decisions that I made and that we made together in case of certain eventualities. That's something too that you have to think about at some point. And as a caregiver sometimes, or a care partner, sometimes you think about those things alone without discussing it with a partner. Just as Parkinson's patients on the Facebook group that Brett started just talk about certain things with themselves.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes the care partners have their own independent worries that they don't want to burden their partner with. So, you know, just to be totally candid, those are things that I thought about, and I've made decisions in my own life and my own career to ensure that I could adapt, to have options, to make sure that the family was supported, Brett was supported, that I could support everybody if Brett could not work.
Yeah, I really appreciate you naming that, Katharine. I think it often is one of the elephants in the room, if you will. And, you know, folks with Parkinson's find it difficult to talk about, I know, and then I'm sure, and I'm hearing you say that care partners can find that, you know, same conversation difficult as well. I think in our case, planning has been really important, intentional planning, right? I mean, I guess we should all do that anyway to some extent, but, you know, just being really mindful about all the things that you know, individuals and couples and families should be attending to, and make sure those things get done. So I appreciate you naming that. Tracey, did you have anything to add?
Well, I think I'm going to share a line from the doctor who diagnosed Alan. He told Alan, and then on the second visit, I was present. He said, "Don't let someone else's story be your story." And so I think he was highlighting that, because Parkinson's, as one of the ladies mentioned earlier, you know, there are so many different courses and symptoms and manifestations that, you know, if someone is newly diagnosed, you know, I would say to them, you know, it's just so varied, and, you know, you just don't know how it's going to play out. And as hard as it is, I mean, our spouses and a lot of people we know, like Cherryl said, I mean, people live well with Parkinson's. So that would be my thoughts.
Well, I just deeply appreciate all of you, and I've learned so much myself tonight. And I know that those who have the privilege of watching this on PDYs will learn from you as well. Thank you for who you are and what you do and the examples you set and the challenges you put out there and all the support you give to one another and to me and people I love and care for in the community. I'm deeply grateful and better for it, and really honored that you would take time to sit down and share part of yourselves and your stories with me and with others to come. So thank you, and look forward to maybe another one of these in the not too distant future.
Well,
Thanks.
thanks, Ellen.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
inviting me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care.